Alrighty guys, what is up? And today I'm coming at you with a deck profile on my Synchron deck. This is one of the decks I've been wanting to show you guys for quite some time now, just because I picked up interest in the deck a while back. I've been playtesting a couple different ratios, a couple different extra deck options, and this is kind of the build I've stuck with for now. There's a couple of changes I do want to make to the deck. I'll note those in a little bit. But before I get to the actual deck profile, I'll just give you guys a heads up. I have two decks I'm planning on profiling for you guys. One is just literally missing one card and it'll be done. And that's a barrier statue deck, kind of a neat little anti-meta deck that just consistently pisses people off. And the other being a Blue Eyes deck. The Blue Eyes deck, I'm still missing quite a few cards from Shining Victories, and plus a few other cards here and there. But once I do get that build kind of settled in, I guess, I'll show you guys. And also, if I do sound a little bit different, coming off a little bit of, I guess, sinus problem, I guess you could say. Not really like an actual infection or sickness or anything. Just been really stuffy and really just like drugged up trying to get over it. Been coughing and just like natural body things that aren't exactly pleasant. But yeah, enough about me and my problems. Let's look at the Synchron deck, why not? So starting off with the monsters, for the tuners, of course, 3 Jet Synchron, one of the best tuners in the deck. You can send a monster from your hand to the graveyard to special summon him from grave, and then during the turn he's sent to the graveyard for a Synchro summon. You can add a junk tuner, or add a junk monster from your deck to your hand, which that first effect you very rarely ever want to do. His best effect is basically sending a monster from your hand to grave to special him out of grave. Because one of the main resources you want to set up as quickly as possible for this deck is your graveyard, because a lot of your stuff goes off in the graveyard, or you want it in the graveyard. Like, for example, Cobalt Hedgehog's a really good one. Glow Up Bulb, Dandelion can also go off in the graveyard, and also Level Eater is another one you want to see as quickly as possible in the graveyard. So just being able to get those like important monsters to grave, just to special him out of the graveyard is also really good, but he gets banished when he leaves the field. But of course, Imperial Iron Wall is a thing, so you can side that if you want. Because Imperial Iron Wall, if you like take this deck to like say a big event, or if you're just playing it at locals, you can side Imperial Iron Wall for Cosmos. Because depending on how well your Cosmo opponent sets up their board, you can beat it really easy. Funny thing was, my first match the other day at locals was against my friend Billy. I love him to death, but he just got a really bad hand in Cosmos, and it was really funny because he summoned a Dark Planet, set a Mojo, and passed. Then I managed to top deck a Regeki, and then Regeki'd it. He let it go through, and then he got a search off a Dark Planet. And then I just made Quasar an attack for game, which is pretty funny, and one of the guys sitting next to me was playing Monarchs. He looked over, and he's like, "Oh, you made Quasar?" And I was like, "Yeah," and I just went with Quasar. So it was kind of funny. So if you get like the right hand with this deck, making Quasar is no problem, and there's some other combos and things you can play in the extra deck, which I'll get into later. Going on to the next monster, Junk Synchron. Something you need to know about this deck is you really want to save your normal summon for like those key monsters. Like Junk Synchron's one of them. Also Mathematician. A lot of your other guys you really don't want to normal summon, because you're either going to special summon them by their own effects, or you're going to bring them out by another monster's effect. So this guy, he's just like your instant synchro. You bring back a level 2 or lower. Combos off really well with Doppel Warrior, because you special, or your normal summon this guy, special your guy out of grave, and since you special summon a monster from grave, Doppel Warrior's effect will trigger in the hand, and you special Doppel Warrior. Like, one of the best things to get out with this is either Glow Up Bulb or Jet Synchron, or if you play it like I do, Unknown Synchron, because then you have a level 1 tuner, and then you can sync with this in the Doppel Warrior to make a Librarian. And then the Doppel Warrior effect activates where you get your tokens, and then you can sync with a Doppel Warrior token and your level 1 tuner, and then make a Formula Synchron to use your Formula effect, and then your Librarian effect to draw 2 cards, which is really good. Because as long as you keep Librarian on the field and you can make Formula Synchrons, and even Charge Warrior, you can maintain a decent hand and still end with a really nasty board. The next, 3 Quick Draw Synchron. Again, one of the better tuners of the deck. The only thing I don't like about him is his restriction to where he can't be used as a synchro material, except for a monster that lists a Synchron as a tuner. So he makes your, basically your warrior synchros, like Drill Warrior, Junk Gardener, Road Warrior, and things like that. So he's pretty good. One of the combos I like to do with him is, like, say if you're going second, you can use this guy's effect to discard Level Leader, special summon him, and then Level Lead him. And something else you want to know about this deck is you want to keep two things handy, and that's tokens and dice. Because your Level Leader helps you keep track of your level reductions, because you can do that very, very easily in this deck. It's one thing you want to keep track of. So, like I said, you can discard Level Leader, special Quick Draw. Level 8 Quick Draw, so now he's a level 4, and then you sync for Jet Warrior, and then your Jet Warrior can bounce a card back to the hand, which is pretty cool. So some neat combos like that. Also, he makes Road Warrior, which is a really, really great turn 1 card. Because if you have Road Warrior and a Level Leader engraved, then you basically have a Quasar, essentially. One Glow Up Bulb, nice German I got recently. Did want to get an ulti, just can't find one. But granted, he is back at 3, but you really want to only play him at 1, because he is a once per duel effect. But the mill effect is just really, really good. Sometimes you do get really, really bad mills with this and tuning. Which another option you could play is shoutouts to 037 Wolf. He's the guy that won a regional in Australia playing Synchrons, and he's kind of the guy who inspired me to play this deck. He played some Lightsworn stuff in there. He played Raikou, which basically lets you pop a card, kind of clears your opponent's field to make sure your plays go off safely. And plus it lets you mill cards, and like I said, a lot of your cards you really want to mill in your graveyard just to kind of set up your plays. But sometimes you do get that really, really good mill off of this guy. Like, say, if you get lucky and you mill your Dandelion, you special him out of grave, and then your Dandelion gives you your tokens, and you can sync with this in a token to make a Formula Synchron, which is pretty good. One Unknown Synchron, he's another kind of special summon card, I guess. Part of me, I'm kind of on the fence about him, that's why I just play him at 1. And plus his effect is once per duel. Where if your opponent controls a monster and you don't, you can special summon him from your hand. But again, that's once per duel, and he's just there for being another level 1 tuner. But part of me wants to take him out and kind of actually try out the Lightsworn variant. But I still like him just because he's another level 1 tuner. And again, it helps you go into Formula Synchron and plays like that. One Mathematician, basically just there's another Foolish Burial, sets up combos. And plus if he dies by battle, you get to draw a card, which is kind of decent. And plus he's a level 3 tuner, so if you have this guy in hand with the Tatsunoko, you can sync for those and make a Stardust Charge Warrior and draw a card, which is pretty cool. One Dandelion, because it's only, you're only allowed to play 1. But there's a little combo, I guess you can do, you can call it a combo, but not a lot of people know about this, but somebody explained it to me when I was watching deck profiles on this, which is actually really cool. But you can actually loop this with Drill Warrior, which I'll get into that later once we go into the extra deck. Then 3 Quillbolts, really, really neat card. Again, something else you can kind of keep recycling with Imperial Iron Wall. Because, like I mentioned earlier, if you side deck Imperial Iron Wall, it kind of keeps your opponent from banishing your cards. And if you have Quillbolt in grave, if you don't know what Quillbolt does, if you have a tuner on the field, you special summon him out of grave, but banish him whenever he leaves the field, so it's like a Plague Spreader effect, essentially. So if you have your, you can basically keep recycling this guy with, along with, what's his name, Jet Synchron. If you have Imperial Iron Wall on the field, and as long as you have a tuner for this guy, or a monster to discard for, Jet Synchron. But he's just another easy special summon, just to kind of help you synchro climb if you have another tuner on the field. The next 3, Doppelwear, again, one of my favorite cards. This guy's just one of my favorite cards of the deck. You special summon monsters out of the graveyard like crazy, and then you get him out of your hand, and then he generates tokens whenever he's sent to the graveyard as a Synchro material, and they're level 1, so again, it helps you go into Formula Synchron, and just kind of go into those really weird Synchro monsters. And one Synchron Explorer, he's, again, one of your guys you want to save your normal summon for. What he does is whenever he's normal summon, you can target a Synchron monster in your graveyard and special summon it, and its effects are negated. So it can help you go into, it can, like, you can normal summon it, bring back your Quick Draw Synchron, and then if you have a level 1 on field, then you can, make Road Warrior right there. Also, you can special, Junk Synchron, and make a Librarian if you wanted to, or you can make Excel Synchron if need be. And then also something else you could do is a special Unknown Synchron and make a Tatsunoko right there, which is alright. So again, he's just one of those few guys you want to save your normal summon for. One tuning word, this is kind of a personal tech choice of mine. I see some people play it, some people don't. Personally, I like him just because he has a level manipulation effect where he can either be treated as a level 1 or a level 2 for a Synchro summon, and then plus if you Synchro with him, you get to draw a card. So it's like this guy plus Glow Up Bulb or Jet Synchron or Unknown Synchron. Plus Formula Synchron, it lets you draw cards, which is pretty cool, and if you can get good cards in your hand, then it's really, really great. Next, 3 copies of Level Leader. This guy you want to get in your grave as quickly as possible, because he's the absolute nuts. As long as you have a monster that's level 5 or higher, then you can just keep reducing it down until it becomes a level 4, and to keep just special summoning this guy to graveyard and Synchro Climb like crazy, which is really, really good. But like I said, he's just, again, a really, really easy card to make Quasar with your Road Warrior, which I'll kind of get into that little combo later, but in most cases, if you don't see this guy within like the first couple turns in your graveyard, then you're probably going to lose that game. Funny story, whenever I took this deck to locals, actually lost against a guy playing Boojins. It was a really fun match. He won game 1, I won game 2, and then game 3 I lost because I milled tuning off of tuning, never saw a Level Leader. It was just kind of a bad time, but it was still pretty fun because I kind of sat there on Imperial Iron Wall, and he eventually drew into a roll to create off of Pot of Duality, which is kind of funny, but just overall, you want to see this guy in the grave as quickly as possible. Then going on to the spells, which is another key part of the deck. Triple tuning. Again, this card's just really, really great. What it does is you add a Synchron tuner from your deck to the graveyard, or not from your graveyard, you add a Synchron tuner from your deck to your hand, then you mill the top card of your deck. So in most cases, you're going to be searching Quick Draw. Unless you already have a Quick Draw in hand, or just kind of depending on what your hand looks like. You can also add Junk Synchron and just use your normal summon for that. Plus, sometimes you do get really good mills off of this. Like you mill a Quill Bolt, you can special summon that. If you like add a Quick Draw or a Junk Synchron, if you added that. You can mill a Dandelion and get some tokens. You can mill a Glow Up Bulb and then mill something else to special summon the Glow Up Bulb. Level Leader also is a great thing to mill off of this. Just want to play it at 3 just because it's one of the best spells of the deck. The next 2 Twin Twister, again, getting stuff to your graveyard is really key. And clearing back row to make sure your plays go off is really, really key, because sometimes your opponent can just like flip the worst floodgate against you. One of the guys at locals was playing Monarchs and actually drew into this and ended up popping it. And allowed me to go off and win that game. In game 2, he actually opened up with a actually game 2, after siding in, I drew into a Mask of Restrict, and then he Twin Twisted, and we all thought it was kind of funny. Just because we both Twin Twisted each other, just floodgates, top decking at the right time. So I do side the 3rd copy of this, in case your opponent does play a lot of like heavy back row. But getting stuff into your graveyard is very, very important in this deck, so being able to hit 2 back row while also setting up your monsters in the graveyard is really, really great. 2 copies of Allure of Darkness, because you do play a fair amount of dark monsters in this deck, but if you can like set your spells and make sure they can go off, this can basically be a card destruction, which is really, really funny. Because like sometimes you can have, say, like a Jet Synchron in hand, like say a Glow Up Bulb, or a Level Leader, or whoever. Like I said, you can just set your back row, Blind Alert, and even if you don't draw a Dark Monster, you can discard all your stuff to grave, and just get all your plays rolling, which in some cases that can be bad, which actually end up milling a Foolish Brand on Twin Twister, which kind of sucked. But that's just the luck of the draw sometimes. But this is just really, really great card for the deck. Now, for the one-ofs, these are pretty self-explanatory. Rhoda searches Junk and Doppel Warrior. 1-for-1, gets Level Leader, gets Glow Up Bulb, gets Unknown Synchron. In some cases, you can get Tuning Where if you need to. 1 Foolish Burial, this should be a no-brainer. If this was at more than 1, then it'd be nuts in this deck and other decks, obviously. Soul Charge, because if you can make a Quasar and you have this, then you can set up really, really good boards. 1 Mind Control, because it is a Synchro deck. You can take those problematic monsters. Apologize for that, again, getting over this thing. But this is a Synchro deck. You can take your opponent's monster and just Synchro with them. Actually helped out in a game against the guy playing Boojins. Because he summoned Mikazuchi and activated Kaiser Costume. I'm like, crap, that's really going to mess me up. And then drew into this, activated it, and then stole Mikazuchi and proceeded to set up my board, which is pretty cool. So this card just comes in handy sometimes. And then Wonder Ageki, because clearing your opponent's board and making sure you can attack is really, really good. And the 1 Upstart, just because a little bit of extra draw power, and an extra 1,000 life points isn't that big of a deal. Then going on to the traps, there's not a whole lot, but they are pretty helpful for the deck. Solemn Warning. It's alright. Just stopping a summon is pretty basic, pretty self-explanatory, and still pretty good. And lastly, 1 Heavy Slump. A lot of people don't know what this card does. But the people that do know what it does just know it really comes in handy. Basically what it does, you can activate it when your opponent has at least 8 cards in their hand, and then your opponent adds his or her hand back to the deck, shuffles it, and draw 2 cards. The basic premise, or the basic concept behind this card in the deck is that if your opponent doesn't know you play this, or they don't think you have it in the hand, because they do know you play it, they can pitch a max C, and then you can proceed to go off, and then basically here's what happens. You have this in hand, your opponent has, and you're going first. They have their 5 cards in hand, they pitch the max C, they have 4. All you have to do is special summon 3 monsters, and then they have 7 cards in their hand. You set this and pass, and then they draw. They have 8 cards in hand, which means the requirement for you to activate this, and then they shuffle their entire hand back in the deck and draw 2 cards. And it's even worse if you just like set up a really, really great board. Like one of the best boards you can set up in this deck is Quasar, Junk Garden, and Herald, or like say a Quasar and a Crystal Wing, or some kind of combination like that. And then your opponent could have drawn like 10 to 12 cards, something crazy like that. And then you just set this and pass, and then you flip it, and they can't stop it. And it's just really, really chilly and really good. Just really makes your opponent neg really hard. In most cases, they're not going to be able to recover from that. So that's it for the main deck. Going on to the extra deck. Well, of course, it's all synchros. 3 formula. This is pretty self-explanatory. Level 2 tuner synchro lets you draw a card whenever you summon it. A lot of people, they have bumped it down to 2 just because the extra deck on this deck is really, really tight. I personally prefer 3 just because I've had a couple games where I can make 3, but it doesn't come up very often, but I may take it out for something else. One Tatsunoku, again, it's a synchro tuner. It lets you synchro climb. It also lets you use a monster in your hand as a material for this, which is really good. But like one of the best combos, like I mentioned earlier, is this guy would fill with a Mathematician or like say a Dandelion. Then you can sync for that and make a Charge Warrior, and then Charge Warrior can draw a card. One Herald of the Arclight. He's what I like to call one of the ending cards. He's basically one of those synchro monsters in the extra deck you want to end your board with, not make and then synchro with it. Because he's basically a macro Cosmos, and then it's a once per turn free negate, which is really, really good. So if your opponent kind of forgets the Herald isn't there, or like they don't know what the Herald does, then it just is basically a pressure card where you can sit on it, and they really have to think over their plays, because they could activate that 1 key card, and then you can just tribute this and negate it and just kind of disrupt their plays completely. 1 Hyper Librarian, if you can keep this guy on board and keep making synchros, then you can draw a ton of cards, which is really, really good, which this is kind of the reason this card's at 1. Because decks like this that synchro so much, just you can almost draw your entire deck in 1 turn, if you have the right hand. 1 Excel Synchron. He gets your, basically your Jet Synchron into grave, and then, if you don't know what he does, is once per turn you can send a Synchron from your deck to the graveyard, and he can either gain its level or decrease his level by that monster's. So like the basic combos, like you summon this guy, and then you activate his effect. Depending on what your setup is, you can either make him level 4 or level 6 with Jet Synchron. And then your Jet Synchron's also in grave, so if you have a monster, you can bring it back. And also, he is a tutor synchro, so he basically, again, helps synchro climb into those bigger monsters. 1 Jet Warrior. You very, very rarely ever make this guy with Jet Synchron, because it'd basically be Jet. Basically would be Jet Synchron, that's level 1, plus 4 more stars, and you'd have to have multiple monsters in the field to actually make it that way. So in most cases, you're going to make it with like Quick Draw and Level Leader and stuff. But like I said earlier, he is a compulse for 1 card your opponent controls whenever he's summoned. And then you can tribute a level 2 or lower monster and special summon him from grave, but banish it whenever he leaves the field. So you can do that effect every once in a while. But in most cases, you're just going to play him as, like, I'll say a level 5 to basically make Quasar. The next 1 Charge Warrior. Something else you could do in this deck is play Armory Arm if you wanted to. Because what some people like to do is you can summon this guy, and then his effect activates where you draw a card. That's basically what I play him for, is just draw more cards and a synchro climb and things like that. But you can summon Armory Arm, equip it to this guy, and I think Armory Arm's effect increases it by 1200 maybe. I could be wrong. It increases it by some number like that. So you can basically make this guy like a 32 beat stick that can attack all special monsters your opponent controls. The attacking effect is his effect, where he can attack all special summon monsters your opponent controls once each, which is pretty good. So it helps kind of clear off those decent boards that can't deal with a big beat stick like that. This is probably gonna have to be edited in a couple clips. Next, one Jewel Warrior. This is the guy I was talking about earlier with Dandelion. Now, like the combo I was talking about earlier, let me, there he is. If you don't know what Jewel Warrior does, his effective left turn, you can have his attack, permanently, and then you can attack your opponent directly. And then once per turn, you can discard a card and then banish him, but then you special summon him during your next standby phase, and you add a monster from your graveyard to your hand. So what you do is you sync up into him with quick draw and then like somebody else, I guess. But what he does is you activate his effect, discard Dandelion, and then you banish him, clearing up space on your field. And then the Dandelion effect triggers, and you special summon your 2 tokens, and then you can synchro with the tokens. And then the next turn, Jewel Warrior comes back, and then you can add back Dandelion, and then you can do it again if you want to, which is pretty cool. But he's just basically there as being another level 6 synchro. And also your Dandelion combo goes off pretty well. And he gets stuff engraved. Excuse me. Next, one Junk Guard. He's again one of these ending cards, or stopping cards, I guess you could call them. For those of you who don't know what Junk Guard does, once per turn during either player's turn, you can target a monster your opponent controls, change its battle position, and then whenever he is sent from the field to the graveyard, he doesn't have to be destroyed by your opponent's card effect. You can synchro with him if you needed to, and then change a monster's battle position. So it's really, really annoying. Because, like, my favorite ending board in this deck is this, plus Quasar and Herald. You have your Herald and your Quasar, which is 2 negates, which is pretty cool. And then if they try to run everything, you can just be like, okay, Junk Guard effect, put it in defense, which you have 2,600 and 4,000 staring them in the face, which is kind of hard to run over in that kind of situation. The next one, Crystal Wing. Again, one of my favorite cards. This guy's just one of my favorite cards in the deck. I just noticed I keep saying again, even though I haven't said some of these things more than once, and somebody's probably going to point that out in the comments. But Crystal Wing is another one of those ending cards, because he's another, like I said, another one of those ending cards. You can also Synchro Climb with him, but if you have a Soul Charge after making a Quasar, it's just really good, because you have basically 2 negates, and then he can gain the attack of a monster during the battle position that he battles, so it just pushes for more damage, so he's just really, really great card for the deck. One Road Warrior. Some people don't actually know this, but you can basically pull your Jet Synchron out of the deck. But like I said, he's earlier. This plus a Love Leader Engrave is an instant Quasar, because you summon this guy, like you can make him with Love Leader, and then activate his effect to special summon Jet Synchron, and then I'll go ahead and show you where the dice come in handy for the Love Leader effect. You activate your Love Leader effect, reduce his level by 1. And then you special summon it out of the graveyard. So now he's a level 7. And then you sync with these 2 for a Formula Synchron. And Formula Synchron lets me draw a card. So then, if you wanted to, you could level 8 him again. So now he's a level 6. And then you summon Level Leader. And then you can sync for Tatsunoko if you want. Sorry for the random cut. I don't know if you're gonna notice that or not, but my camera just randomly decided to run out of memory, I guess, so I had to clear up space on my memory card. Don't know exactly where I left off, but just basically got through the whole, like, I guess, Level Leader combo with, this guy, and, Jet Synchron. So he's just another really, really great card for the deck. And then Trishula, because it's Trishula. Banish cards out of your opponent's hand, limit their resources. Going first, is really good. And also, if you have, like, the right setup, like, say if you have a Formula Synchron, and plus, I guess, level 7 stars worth of monsters, you could say. But also, if you wanted to, you could have Excel Synchron, and then 8 stars worth of, or have 4 stars worth of different monsters. Because basically what I'm getting at is both of these guys have effects where they can Synchro Summon during your opponent's turn, which is really, really good. So if you have the right field set up with these guys and the right number of monsters, you can Trish during your opponent's turn, which is really, really good. Very, very rarely ever comes up, but whenever you can do it, it's just really, really cool and kind of disruptive, really. And then lastly, one Shooting Quasar Dragon, because he's like the be-all, end-all boss monster of the deck. It's a free negate, he can attack up to the number of non-tuners, which is really, really good, and just ends the game in most cases whenever you summon out. Maybe not the turn he's summoned, because then you can just leave him on the field and mess up your opponent's plays. But again, if you have this guy plus a Soul Charge, It's just really good. I don't know if I said really enough times, but I can't emphasize how great it is. But that's basically it for the deck itself. Before I go into the side deck, I want to talk about a couple of possible extra deck choices that I had friends suggest to me whenever I first built the deck. Some other things you could play would be Scrap Dragon. It's another level 8 option. You can also play Stardust Dragon if you wanted to, just because they're both really good level 8 monsters. He can tribute stuff and put it in grave to kind of set up. It's just kind of slow in my opinion, because you'd have to summon this guy and somehow get like a level 1 on field. There's actually a fun combo you can do with this, where you bring this guy out with a level leader, where you summon him out, and then if you don't have another monster, you can reduce him to a level 7, summon level leader, tribute, pop. And then you can reduce him to a level 6, bring out level leader, tribute and pop. Reduce him to a level 5, tribute and pop. And then reduce him to a level 4, tribute and pop. So with that, you're just basically popping 4 cards, which is really really crazy. So it's pretty fun if you want to play that if you want to. Just kind of situational. Again, extra deck space is really tight. Next, Junk Archer. It's another basic quick draw target, where if your opponent's playing like a deck that's really relying on XC monsters, you could play this, because what it does is once you can target a monster your opponent controls, banish it, and during the end phase of this turn, it returns your opponent's side of the field in the same battle position. So it clears guys off the field, and like I said, if your opponent's really reliant on XC monsters, you can summon this, activates effect, banish the monster, the materials go to grave, and then during the end phase it'll come back and it doesn't have the materials, so it can't activate its effect, so it's kind of neat. It has some fun combos, but yeah, just kind of extra deck space is really tight. And then also something else a lot of people are starting to play is Stardust Cipher Divine Dragon, the new guy to Shining Victories. If you don't know what he does, is he has the same summoning requirements as Quasar. Must be synchro summoned, can't be special summoned by other ways, and the first time each card you control will be destroyed each turn by battle or card effect, it's not destroyed. And then once per turn during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can negate that effect and then destroy 1 card on the field, so it doesn't have to be the monster activated its effect. And then you can banish this card from graveyard and the target elevator lower Stardust monster graveyard and special summon it. So to play him to his maximum potential, you can play Stardust Dragon and have Stardust Dragon at grave. But this guy with a soul charge, you can either make this guy first or make Quasar first, just depending on whichever one you feel like. You can make the first soul charge materials back, summon the second. So you have a Quasar negate, which is really good. And then this guy can protect each one of the cards up to once per turn by battle or card effect. And then whenever they try to activate a monster effect, you can just be like negate and then pop a card in the field, which is really cool. It kind of helps control the field. And then if you want to, you can play Shooting Star Dragon if you found the space. Like, if you wanted to, you could cut the third formula Synchron and play either this guy or Shooting Star Dragon. Because it's basically the kind of same concept behind playing Barbaroid in any deck that plays Cyber Dragon Nova. Because if you try to summon the Nova and they, like, stop the summon and just kill it that turn, then the Nova effect will activate, and then you can bring out Barbaroid, which is pretty cool. So if you try to summon your Quasar and then they get rid of it somehow, you can bring back Shooting Star Dragon if you wanted to. But again, you can cut the third formula Synchron if you needed to. It's just personal preference for me. And lastly, we have the side deck. Also, pretty sweet tokens. We have Spider-Man, German, Superman, Exodia. Just fun little fake cards. You want to keep tokens on you for this deck, because Dandelion and Doppel Warrior go off a lot. For the side deck, 2 Flying Sea. This is mainly for PK Fire, Burning Abyss, or anything of that nature. Really helped in the Bujin matchup because it really messed up his plays. He summoned a Mikazuchi, and then he banished to summon Harume. And then I special summoned this, and it cut him off for going into his deck trap, which is kind of annoying. So it just really helps against those kinds of decks. 2 Gamecill, mainly for Monarchs and those just kind of really annoying boss monsters. Like, say, your Great Magnus, your Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon, or Majesty's Fiend, just really to kind of get those guys off the field. And 2200 is really that hard to deal with the size of some of your guys in the extra deck. Like I mentioned earlier, the 3rd Twin Twisters, 2 System Down, pretty self-explanatory, really messes up Cosmos. Two cards to the Forbidden Spell, kind of a neat tech I've been playing around with recently. Kind of on the fence between this and Magic Jammer. I just kind of like this one a little bit more than Magic Jammer. Because if you don't know what Magic Jammer does, if your opponent activates a spell card, Magic Jammer either negates it or they have to discard a spell card to let it go through. This, you have to have a spell card in your hand to activate it. You activate this whenever they would play a spell card. You discard your spell and then negate the activation, and then your opponent can't activate spell cards of the same name for the rest of the duel. So like, say if you're playing up against Monarchs and you stop, they activate Pantheism, you flip this, discard your spell, and it gets the Pantheism, they can't activate it for the rest of the duel, so they can't use their banish effect from grave, you can't use it to unbrick their hand, so it really puts them in a tight spot. Also really hard against, like, say if your Cosmos, playing up against Cosmos, it would stop their E-Tail, which is kind of neat. Can't get rid of Cosmo Town if you wanted to, just really good for those decks that really rely on that one or two spell cards. The next, two-row Decree for those really back row heavy decks that play a lot of traps. If you want to against Clean Demise, those would really help, but pretty self-explanatory. Two Masker Restrict, mainly for Monarchs, also for any deck playing Kaijus, because having that really cool boss monster like your Quasar or your Crystal Wing summon, and then they just Kaiju it off the field is really frustrating. So this card just kind of helps with that. Excuse me. And then lastly, like I mentioned earlier, two Empire Armor Wall. If you want to, you can bump this up to 3. If you absolutely want to, you can like cut the Gamma Seals or the Flying Seas. It's just personal preference. Or if you want to, you could cut the third Twin Twisters and play a third, because this also hurts your opponent if they're really relying on banishing cards. This could hurt them and also help you out, because like I said earlier, you can just basically keep using your Cobalt or your Jet Synchron. If you have this on the field, just keep recycling their effects over and over again. But yeah, that's it for the really long deck profile. Normally, I don't do deck profiles this long. But this one needed a lot more explaining just because this deck's super combo heavy. You really have to know what you're doing, otherwise you can basically burn yourself out of resources and put yourself in a tight spot. But yeah, this deck's a lot of fun to play. It's one of my all-time favorite decks just because 5Ds was my favorite series. Yusei's a pretty awesome character. The deck makes a lot of really fun plays, just makes some really cool combos and things like that. Maybe updating this deck later on in the future. But like the main things I'm worried about changing is like, if anything, I take out the Unknown Synchron and maybe the Tuning Where they're not absolutely necessary, but they do come in handy from time to time. But yeah, that's it for the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys later.